Well, good morning and welcome to the aforementioned Grow Omaha show. Jeff Beals here at your service from NAI NP Dodge Commercial Real Estate Company. We're also brought to you by D&M Roofing, residential and commercial roofing contractor to the stars and everyone else. Well, glad that you have joined us today on this midsummer Saturday. Great show planned for you, as we always do. But without any further ado, it's time to introduce my co-host, a man who himself is in midsummer form, Trenton Magid.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Mr. Beals.
Well, you didn't burn down the shop while I was gone last week.
People are clamoring to get you back, so
well, I appreciate it.
I kept the seat warm, but I'll take it.
Well, the FCC license is still intact, so that's all for the best, but I appreciate you covering for me while I was gone. It's good to be back home.
Well, we just got back yesterday.
Where was yesterday? Or where were you yesterday?
We took a road trip across Nebraska. Have you ever been to Sample, Nebraska?
I don't think I've ever heard of it.
We're driving into the city, and there's a sign that says, urine sample.
Urine sample. Very good. So how long did you work on that one?
I didn't. You just have to watch, I think, the second season of Friends.
Did you really drive across Nebraska?
No.
Okay, so that was all set up just for the urine sample joke?
Yeah.
With that, we're going to talk a little bit about Nebraska Crossing, because Nebraska Crossing is the best place to shop for the big-time brands in the state of Nebraska. And they also have the Fast Cash app. So if you are looking to actually make money while you spend money, you want to go to Nebraska Crossing because it's 15% cash back on every purchase you make, so long as you, A, have the Nebraska Crossing app, or the NEX app as they'd like to call it, and B, you tie a credit card to the Fast Cash option within it. Then always use that credit card every time you go to Michael Kors, Coach, Nike, Under Armour. Trenton particularly likes Annie Ann's pretzels. Wherever you go, always
Lindt
use
chocolate.
Lindt chocolate.
I got my Cash App wallet going.
I know. I've made good money on that thing. Anyway, in about a month, Rod Yates, owner of Nebraska Crossing, tells us we're going to be announcing two big-time national retailers that are brand new to Nebraska. These are prestigious names, and a lot of you are going to swoon when you hear these names. So that's coming in about a month. It's a done deal. We can't announce them just quite yet. At any rate, let's go into our news of the week, which is brought to you by Eagle Mortgage, eaglemortgagecompany.com, located at 114th and Davenport. They will help you with your FHA, VA, and, of course, conventional loans. Refinances, too. Doesn't always just have to be a new house. But they, unlike a lot of mortgage brokers, consider themselves to be counselors. They like to talk to you and figure out what it is that you're trying to do, learn about your financial situation, help you get that pre-approval letter, and then guide you through this entire steps, all the steps of the entire process, because it can be a little bit intimidating for people, especially if it's been a while since you have purchased a house. You can find them online at eaglemortgagecompany.com.
Fly with the Eagle.
And Trenton, first up on the docket, the Moxie by Marriott Hotel, which has been proposed but stalled.
11th and Harney.
12th and Harney, I believe it is.
Okay.
Yeah. It's where the old Market Diner was located for all those years.
Yep.
It had been kind of languishing there, and a lot of people were calling us and sending us emails to Grow Omaha saying, is that project still on? Is that still happening? Well, there's a lot of construction equipment on the site. They've moved out the concrete barriers to give themselves a little more room. I've talked to a couple people who maybe are contractors or subcontractors on that project, and everything says, yep, full speed ahead.
I just remember the footprint is like 9,000 feet or something.
Tiny,
like that.
very urban.
Yeah.
It's a really cool concept, and I have not stayed in a Marriott by Moxie hotel. There aren't very many of them around the country.
But you've got a lot of Moxie.
Thank you. A couple retail buildings are planned for 156th and State Street. So this is darn near all the way to Bennington. We're starting, as you always say, and real estate people always say, retail follows rooftops, right? Well, in that 156th and State.
Rooftop follows churches and gas stations.
Okay, but that's a good point. But in that part of the metro, a lot of single-family housing construction over the last couple of years, a lot of it underway right now. So now you're starting to see the inevitable retail that comes in there. 10,000 square foot building and a 5,000 square foot building, southwest corner, 156th and State. Of course, that's also just north of that OPS high school, which will be in business this fall for the new school year. All right, next up on the docket, Trenton, we passed a what was it, initiative or constitutional ballot sort of thing. There was a constitutional amendment on the ballot back in November to allow casino-style gambling in the state of Nebraska, but it has to be tied to a horse track.
Who would have thought?
Okay, it has to be tied to a horse track. Well, now everyone and his brother wants to have a horse track. And so
What could go wrong?
what could possibly go wrong? Just this week, there were groups that are proposing horse racing tracks in Bellevue, York, Scottsbluff, Norfolk, and North Platte, Nebraska. Why? Because in Nebraska now, if you have a horse racing track, you can attach a dirty little casino or a big casino to it. And so I am just waiting until there's like going to be some guy who wants to like race two 12-year-old mules in his backyard so he can put up one of those South Dakota style gas station casinos in his living room. But so we'll keep our eye on this.
All I have to say about that, and I'm guilty of going to Vegas and imbibing a little bit and across the river even. So if you see me over there, don't judge. However, could you imagine, and our next guest might have something to say about that, could you imagine if Exarban became a casino, which a lot of people proposed
back in 1995,
and not the amazing mixed-use development that it is? Could you imagine?
Well, there is one thing I am imagining, and that is how long will it take, and I mean this with all sincerity, how long will it take before someone is trying to propose a horse racing track right in West Omaha so they can get a casino where all of that affluence is and all of that population? How long will it take before someone wants to shoehorn some sort of pathetic-looking horse racing track on the industrial track between Epley and downtown? I mean, I'm not kidding.
I'm looking forward to
wait.
Lake Zorinsky Downs.
Zorinsky Downs. The other thing that I get a kick out of these horse racing tracks, the one of them has a proposed 2-day racing season. That is almost as short as
we thought about going 3, but we just didn't know if we had the market for it.
That is almost as short as the caddy swim at Bushwood Country Club.
1 to 115.
1 to 150. So at any rate, we're going to keep our eye on that. That could be kind of interesting. All right. If you love construction, and we do, there's no doubt about it, you have definitely got to see the Brad Williams Grow Omaha construction update on our website, growomaha.com.
We're talking helicopters.
It's so cool. Yeah, Brad, and you guys all know Brad. He's on the show all the time. But Brad, about 4 times a year, he charters a helicopter.
Yeah.
And he gets his still cameras up there. He gets his video camera up there. Well, much of this month's...
And he's not a small guy, ladies and gentlemen.
Brad?
He's tall.
He's ample. So much of this month's video was shot from the helicopter. So you have beautiful views of the riverfront park construction, of the Mercantile District, Builders District, the Millwork Commons area. There's a shot where he swings around the southwest part of downtown, and you see the aerial of the tower crane over the Juvenile Justice Center that's under construction. Got to see it. So if you go to growomaha.com, you click on shows in the navigation bar. There's a drop-down menu, and then on that drop-down menu, you can see construction update.
And that's right before on our YouTube channel that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Doesn't cost nothing. They don't send you a bunch of emails or anything like that. But we need our subscribers.
And then finally, construction equipment is working on site of the former Village Inn, and I can't remember what brand it was, but there was kind of like a downscale hotel. Was it Roadway maybe? But anyway, right around that Village Inn at about 78th and Dodge. This is going to be the Clove, really attractive looking 175 unit. $35 million project, 5-story building. Jay Development is doing it. And that construction equipment, I noticed this week, is full bore straight ahead on that project.
And they're doing the project down the street, the Swivel, just east of Crossroads.
That's really looking good. That's also 5 stories. They're the classic 5-story pedestal buildings.
I still don't understand how it's going to swivel on its foundation, but I don't think it will.
I don't know. Maybe they're going to surprise you.
That would be expensive, ladies and gentlemen.
That would be. Could you imagine the rent? But the building's looking great. And it's bigger than I thought it would, because for the longest time, now we're talking about the Swivel on 72nd, just north of Dodge, as Trent mentioned. For the longest time, they had the 5 stories in place for the part closest to 72nd Street.
Right.
Now that part to the east is all coming up, so that's going to be a really long, big building. A lot of units. All right. Well, that's your development news of the week, which is brought to you by Eagle Mortgage, eaglemortgagecompany.com. They know mortgages like nobody knows mortgages. When we come back, we're really excited. We're going to bring on Jay Noddle. He is the head of Noddle Companies, but in addition to that role, he is also head of the Urban Core Committee. We're going to talk urban development. We're going to talk about where Omaha needs to go in the center of its city in order to attract the best people and the best companies and visitors and investment and everything else. So good stuff. Stay with us. Promise you're going to enjoy it. And you're listening to Jeff and Trenton on Grow Omaha, brought to you by NAI, NP Dodge, and D&M Roofing. We'll be back in a moment on News Radio 1110 KFAB. And welcome back to the show. Jeff Beals and Trenton Maggot at your service from NAI, NP Dodge Commercial Real Estate Company. We're also brought to you by D&M Roofing. Eric Obrumt and the team over there. They're good friends of ours. They've been sponsoring us for a number of years, and you hear Eric on the show periodically when we do our call-in show, but we highly recommend them for both residential and commercial roofing services. Well, this is great. We have Jay Noddle with us. Jay is the head of Noddle Companies, big-time real estate development firm based here in Omaha, doing business in multiple states around the country. Jay, welcome back to the show.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Always good to have you back, and we appreciate your sponsorship of Grow Omaha and your leadership in the city of Omaha. And it's that leadership role in the city of Omaha that we're going to be talking about a little bit today. A lot of people know that you are the head of the Urban Core Committee here in Omaha, but for those who don't, what exactly is that committee?
Well, it's a group. It's an effort that originated from the Chamber of Commerce, and one that has now become very collaborative between the business community and the city. And our mission is to create a new blueprint for the core of the region. Really, we always talk about the core of the city, but it's the core of the region.
Defined as?
The 7-county area.
Well, that's the over the city, but as far as the urban core, what are
the boundaries of the core are a little bit loose, but think about it as Saddle Creek to the river, and generally Leavenworth to Cummings. So that geography is the core. It's the heartbeat of the region, and it's very, very important that we put more focus on urbanizing and advancing development in the core in a whole host of ways. If you look at communities around the country that say we aspire to be like, so that might be Denver or Nashville, could be Cincinnati, could be parts of St. Louis or Milwaukee, Minneapolis. Those communities, not only, Atlanta's another one, those communities not only have strong cores, but they've put a lot of focus on their core. And so what makes a strong core are housing of all types, starting with affordable housing, jobs, amenities, retail service type amenities to service and support people living in the core of the city, education, academic centers, public spaces, certainly transportation of all types. If you think about our region, because of the way Omaha and Council Bluffs geography has played out over the years, we have a lot of folks, the majority of our residents in the region live outside of the core. Part of that is because we've kind of have a lopsided metropolitan area because of the state line and the river and all those kinds of things. But we've all been working on a total mobility plan for the region, which is really led by MAPA. And so think about this total mobility plan and how we move people in the entire region, part of which brings them to the core. And then once we get folks to the core, whether they're commuting to the core, to and from the core, or they're living in the core, we have to have a great way for them to move around in the core. So it's quite an effort. It's kind of like a 7-layer cake in 3D. But we've got a great group of elected and appointed public servants, as well as the business community and a few philanthropists, are certainly visible as part of our group. And it's really interesting, and it's terribly important right now. I think it's urgent.
So the core, Jay, is basically the downtown, midtown area, as you described, heart of the city. What would you say are the strengths and weaknesses of the core? But let me couch it this way. In what ways is our core of our city ahead of other communities? And in what ways is it perhaps lagging?
Great question.
In 20 minutes or less.
Yeah. I think our strength is our infrastructure, our civic amenities. Soon our airport will be going under construction and expanding. So if you think about our cultural fabric, our cultural backbone in the region, just look at what we have in the core. It's pretty remarkable. Our healthcare presence in the core.
Ever growing
and on steroids, so to speak. So we've got the infrastructure. We've got the skeleton that's so darn important. Now we need people. And in order to bring more people to the core, we've got to work really hard on economic and workforce development incentives for the core. Our toolbox maybe needs a few more tools, and they need to be freshened up a little bit. And then we got to work on bringing people here, because what's changed over the last 20 to 30 years, and you guys know this from being part of the industry, it used to be that people migrated to where the jobs are, whether it was from state to state, city to city, or neighborhood to neighborhood. What's changed is the jobs are now coming to where the people are. And it doesn't sound like a big deal, but if you think about it, it's very true. And all you have to do to sort of validate that is look at places like Austin and Dallas and Denver and Nashville. People are migrating there, and the jobs are following them there. So our big mission is to create an environment where we have thousands of new people living in the core. We really believe the jobs will follow as well.
But you also have it. That's a great start to the urban core discussion. But you also have the phenomenon of people thinking or actually living wherever they want to and working remotely. And it's not just you stay in your house out west or somewhere else within the city, and your office might be downtown or wherever, but people from out of state are working. How do you combat that as you're trying to grow the population in Omaha?
Well, someone can, in its simplest form, someone can be working remote and living in the core.
Right.
So I think the number one goal is to get the population in the core of the city growing and growing rapidly. The discussion about remote work and how it takes place, how office space is going to change or maybe not change as much as some people perceive is a whole nother topic. But for the core of the city and the core of the region, it starts with residents living in the core.
And going vertical as far as...
Densifying the core is very important. Transportation supports housing. So if you kind of think through the progression of things, we need a toolbox. Create a urban core district with some shiny new parts and pieces that developers, investors, and people that are living and working already in the core can take advantage of. Work on transportation, getting people to the core, then moving them around once they are in the core. The housing will come. The housing will absolutely come. And you were talking a little bit earlier about some of the new multifamily projects. They're popping up everywhere. People, they want to live in an urban environment more and more all the time. They really don't want a garage with 3 cars in it. And they don't want big yards necessarily, at least not as great a percentage of the population wants those things today as did before. We've done couple housing studies, a retail study, a transportation study, what I'll call a modeling study, looking at structures of these kinds of efforts. And they all support and really validate a lot of these assumptions.
Well, we're talking about the urban core with Jay Noddle of Noddle Companies. There's a lot more that we want to talk about in the core, but we're going to take our middle of the show break. Stay with us. You're listening to Jeff and Trenton on Grow Omaha, brought to you by D&M Roofing and NAI NP Dodge on News Radio 1110 KFAB. And back to Grow Omaha. Jeff Beals, Trenton Maggot here. And this show is brought to you by D&M Roofing and NAI NP Dodge Commercial Real Estate. It's time for the Noddle Company's Commercial Real Estate Development Spotlight. But today, the whole damn show is the Noddle Company's Commercial Real Estate Development Spotlight, because we have Jay Noddle with us, the head of that company. And he is also the chairman of the Urban Core Committee. And that's what we're talking about today. And, Jay, that was some good stuff in the last segment, talking about where we were comparing to other cities in the core and the strengths and weaknesses and all that sort of thing. But when we look forward to the next few years, as we make the core better, and like you said, we attract more human beings to live inside the core, what are our most important priorities?
Well, I mean, it's all, that question is always going to be answered the same way: more people, qualified people, talent, and Nebraska, Omaha, and Lincoln in particular they're in a battle. We're in a battle with all the other states, and it's urgent. We don't have as many people here in Nebraska as most of our aspirational peers do in their states. Therefore, we don't have the same amount of resources, physical, financial, and even mental resources that exist in other places, which is not a criticism, it's a fact. So we got to get sharper. We got to work really hard, and we need to take advantage of the massive amount of public-private investment that's taking place in the core of the city today. If you go back 20 to 25 years ago, and you think about how First National got the ball rolling, and then came UP, and then came World Herald, and then came the Quest Center, and then Gallup. That created a ton of momentum, and our core took a big leap forward. Well, we're sort of continuing that now, and if you think about maybe a 40-year plan, we're a little over halfway there, 21, 22 years into it. Now we've got this massive investment in the park project, in the luminarium, in the steel house, in the airport, which is just getting ready to start. And, if you add all that up, that's well over $1 billion of sort of infrastructure investment. And it's going to make the core much more popular for people of all ages, but particularly for younger people who can come here or are already here and relocate into the core and be there for 20 or 30 or even 40 years. That's going to bring employers. That's going to put us higher up on the radar screen. And what we're all after is that Omaha always has a seat at the table, and particularly the core, and that we're a first choice city. People sometimes, I think, don't realize the improvements to the airport are a huge game changer. The easier it is to get here, the more likely business is going to want to put jobs here. And then you think about the exposure Omaha's gotten in the last 8 weeks with the volleyball tournament, the College World Series, the swim trials, the golf tournament last weekend. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. Even on the golf tournament last weekend, there was a commercial about the Olympic swimming team, and they started to talk about how the swim trials were in Omaha and the College World Series just finished, and how Omaha really does a top-notch job with events. And it gives people exposure to our community that's priceless. So you add all this up, and we got a chance to really have a spectacular city.
And we didn't always have the seat at the table, but on a national level, at the beginning of the show, you talked about how other cities to emulate. But what I've seen with you and a lot of stakeholders in this community is we've kind of risen to the occasion, and I've always told people around me is you always want to compete with yourself because you can't control what other people do. And isn't there a lot of that as well as that Omaha has kind of set the standard for a lot of these things?
Absolutely. I mean, just the number of public-private partnerships that have been created in our area over the last 30 years and the accomplishments, the deliverable, if you will, or the outcome of those public-private partnerships is second to none anywhere in the country. And, you know, we see people coming to the city for a whole host of reasons, for meetings and other events all the time. And for folks that haven't been here before, they're absolutely amazed. It's remarkable to them at the quality of the community and just what we've been able to achieve, particularly for a region our size. We have 1 million people here in round numbers. And the accomplishments that we've been able to complete make it look like there's 3 or 4 million people here.
And we can't control the weather, but we can control the vibe, the friendliness, the activity, the amenities, and things
economy.
like that. And that's what we're all trying to do, I think, Joe.
Yeah, we're talking with Jay Noddle, Noddle Companies, but also head of the Urban Core Committee. And Jay, you brought up all of these massive institutional scale investments inside the core driven by public-private partnerships. The 3 parks, $300 million, not including the Kiewit Luminarium investment. So $300 million, $400 million parks projects. What type of collateral private real estate development do you see coming from those 3 parks, or what would you like to see those 3 parks become a catalyst for?
I think the the amount of private investment that we're going to see directly and just as importantly, indirectly from the park project and all those improvements is going to be massive. I mean, we're now at a point where young people want to be here and they want to live in the core of the city. We've spent a lot of time talking to 20, 30, and 40-somethings, if you will, as we've been thinking through all of this. And we've had a lot of people in those demographics involved in some of the work we've been doing as we've organized this effort. And they like it here. They want to be here. They're surprised. It's hard to live in Chicago and New York and Boston and Philly. It's really hard to live in L.A. And I think what's happening, I'm sure what's happening, is they're starting to see and want to participate in Omaha providing that same kind of a vibe. And it's all about the vibe. It's how you feel when you're in the place and what we have to offer. And so I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of spinoff. There's a lot of announcements coming. God willing, most of everything we're working on or we're aware of comes to fruition. The core group is not a development entity. We're a facilitator. We'll be a facilitator. And who we is as we go forward is going to change a little bit, but it was always planned that way. But, you know, if you think about the things that the Med Center's doing on the west end of the core, and you think about the park projects and everything we've talked about on the east end of the core, just imagine that being connected and what that will do. So I think if people consider the great cities they've been to in America and outside of the U.S., that really great urban feeling, we're going to have that here. And there's plenty of people, public and private, committed to seeing to it happening that way.
And you brought up the transportation. You've been very involved in the transportation element of this whole area. But what's cool about Omaha, we're still a 20-minute city, and the population steadily grows, not as much as we'd like. We're trying to get to grow more. But you have all these amenities, and people will commute an hour and a half on the coast and different places. And it's got a grate on people's mentality.
No doubt about it. And the pandemic has only in some ways exacerbated that.
Yeah, and we were talking earlier about that pandemic creating a lot of remote work. Sometimes those people who love the urban vibe but don't want to have the other costs that come with San Francisco and LA and New York might find a place in the Omaha urban core. Hey guys, we got to take our last break of the show. When we come back, we're going to leave Jay on with us during the lightning round brought to you by Turner Construction. We'll have a couple quick news items like we always do, and then we're going to talk to Jay a little bit about this whole streetcar idea, and maybe we'll squeeze in a couple other little topics. So you're listening to Jeff and Trenton on Grow Omaha. We're brought to you by NAI, NP Dodge, Commercial Real Estate, and of course D&M Roofing. We'll be back in a moment to wrap it up on News Radio 1110 KFAB. And welcome back to the show. Jeff Beals sitting next to Trenton Magid from NAI NP Dodge. We're also brought to you by D&M Roofing. And it's time for the big finish. We like to call this the lightning round, brought to you by Turner Construction. Turner Construction, big-time construction firm based out of New York. But in many ways, they act like a little firm when it comes to your project and the attention that they give you. They came to Omaha for the big Sarpy County data center project, which is so fun to drive by and look around if you're a construction geek like Trenton and I am too. And so that's kind of a fun project, but they do a lot of projects under $5 million. And one of the things we really appreciate about them is their commitment to developing the construction and trades workforces here in the metro area. So we really appreciate Turner Construction being a key sponsor of Grow Omaha and the Lightning Round. Couple quick news items for you. Little King, the sub sandwich chain, is looking to come back in a big way. It was very popular back in the 1970s when it was a new company. Now Chip James, CEO of Lockwood Development, has purchased it. Plans to expand and modernize the brand. Looks like there are going to be 3 new corporately owned stores, 86th and West Dodge, 144th and West Dodge, and near 204th and F. The Naughty Buddha Chocolate Bar has opened at 703 South 24th Street. That's next to the Naughty Buddha Burger Bar. It claims to be Omaha's first vegan ice cream and chocolate bar. Sounds kind of cool.
You have me going for a while.
Hierarchy Salon and Studios and Beauty First will open this summer in a co-branded in-cap bay at 7815 Dodge Street. Beauty First will be relocating from across the street from the Beverly Hills Plaza. Hierarchy will provide upscale, custom-designed hairstyling salons for those professional stylists who want to have their own space and run their own businesses. A little bit of sad news out of the restaurant world. After 47 years, Jack and Mary's restaurant is closing. I'll confess, I probably only went there maybe about 2 times a year, but those 2 times were always on cold, snowy days. A lot of times if I was going out to lunch on a cold, snowy day, I'm like, this is a Jack and Mary's chicken fried steak day. And my gosh, it was always so good.
That was a good run.
Finally, Lettuce Express is now open at 145th and West Maple Road in the Greyhawk Shopping Center. New concept created by Omaha's Cutchell Management, which has a bunch of franchise restaurants for which it owns Omaha rights. Lettuce Express sells signature salads for only $7.95, drinks for only $1, has a drive-through, dine-in. Looking forward to giving that a try for lunch sometime. So let's go back to our conversation with Jay Noddle. He is the CEO of Noddle Companies, but also the head of Omaha's Urban Core Committee. And Jay, there was an article that came out, and a news story that came out a week or 2 ago about Omaha trying to get a federal earmark for an urban streetcar system. I want to talk a little bit about streetcars in the urban core. What role do you see them playing? How important are they? And are these things ever going to happen?
Well, I do believe they will happen. Exactly what shape and form they happen in really remains to be seen. There's a few dozen different style systems. So whether it's a fixed rail system or something with tires and wheels and that kind of thing, it really remains to be seen. But, if we have to make sure that we really do have the demand and that it isn't just a want. There's a big difference between wants and needs. We talk a lot about that. We've got to make sure it's something that we need, not just something that we want. I believe, and I think most of us believe, it will be something that we need. That'll be very important. So as we go forward as a community here the next several months or maybe a couple years, and a few of these proposed projects, not the least of which is the initiatives at the medical center, As we go forward and those things are finalized, it will really make it a lot clearer as to exactly what it is and where it goes. And then, of course, there's a funding plan. Just kind of a little detail.
Yeah, it's all about the money.
And construction costs haven't been our friend here lately. So the cost of what we thought something might cost a couple years ago is really a dramatically different number today. Doesn't mean we can't overcome that. Doesn't mean we can't get it done. But again, how it gets done is going to be better defined in the next several months, I think.
You know, traditionally, going back the last 5 or 10 years, when we talk about streetcars, we think of downtown to the Med Center along Farnham Street, and maybe that would be the route, maybe it wouldn't. But you have a vested interest in a little development called Exarban Village. I always thought that extending that streetcar from the Med Center out to Exarban Village would be a cool concept.
I think it'd be a great concept. It's
I
a
bet you
great
do.
concept. It's a heck of an idea. Can I quote you on that?
Yeah, sure.
You know, we have to do what's so important about this effort. There's a lot of real estate people and bankers and whatnot involved in this Urban Core Alliance effort. We got to make sure that what we're doing is not self-serving, but rather absolutely 100% in the best interest of the community. So, you know, as far as Exarban Village is concerned, I think it's a great idea, and I hope we get a system going one day, and I hope ultimately it can connect to Exarban and a lot of other very important places in the community. But that isn't where we start. We have to start right in the core and make sure that we can keep our arms around it and that we know what we're doing.
Guys, when you think about the shovels going into the dirt for the beginning of that future next project at the Med Center, and Jay, this is something I'm curious about what you're thinking. Just how many 5- and 8-story mixed use or multifamily buildings do you see popping up around those corridors down there?
You know, it's hard to even put a number to it, Jeff, but it's going to be a lot. Assuming everything goes forward as the Med Center has contemplated and been talking about and has announced, we're not going to recognize the core of the city in the next 7 years. 7 years from now, it will look completely different from Saddle Creek to the river. That the whole boundary area, Leavenworth to Cummings, it's going to be very, very different. And the whole city, the whole region is growing like crazy. It's a great time to be here in Omaha and be part of this industry.
Well, it's evidenced by Midtown Crossing, and 2007 they announced that project, and then all hell broke loose and everything else, and that project got completed. But what I was amazed with, Jay, and I think what you're going to see, and interested in your thoughts on it, is the amount of the neighbors, existing housing stock, new projects, and redevelopments, how they've just really expanded.
And we're going to have to continue that, consider that a tease for the next time Jay's on. We are done. Jay Noddle, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Jay Noddle from Noddle Companies. That's it for this week. I'm Jeff Beals.
And I'm Trenton Magid.
You've been listening to Grow Omaha, brought to you by NAI, NP Dodge, and D&M Roofing. Back next week right here at 9 o'clock a.m. on News Radio 1110 KFAB.
If you like this video, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons. And remember, Grow Omaha is not just media. This is a mission. We are trying to build up Omaha and make it an even better place. We can only do that with your help. Share this video with your friends, neighbors, and family.